you, Scott. Good evening. I will call the Finance Committee of February 28th, 2023 to order. It is 6 p.m. First item of business is the approval of minutes, draft minutes of February 14th, 2023 Finance meeting. Is there any discussion?
I'll move approval.
Okay. We have an approval, and I'm losing track here. Now is there discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote on it. Place the order before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Motion carries. We'll move on to item 3, public appearances, non-agenda items. We have no one in chambers and no one online, so no one registered to speak. Moving on to item 4, the Finance Director Report. First item is Treasurer's Report as of November 30th, 2022. I'll turn the floor over to Misty Dodge.
Thank you. So I'll start with the Treasurer's Report, so that is in the packet. The December Treasurer's Report is actually out on the website. You'll see that at the next meeting as well. But I'll remind you that at the point that these reports are done, many of our audit procedures and closure procedures haven't been done yet. So this is very preliminary information, especially as you get into the revenues and expenses, budget versus actual stuff. So I guess I'll pause there in case there's questions on the Treasurer's Report.
Hearing none.
Excellent. So then that audit is 2 weeks away. They'll be out here, so we have a lot of work that we have to get done between now and then. But I do love this time of year because you're kind of wrapping up and cleaning things and making it as good as you can, and then you can close that page. So it's a busy time, but it's also a very exciting time. Investment plan amendments, those are due tomorrow at 4:30. If you have any, please be sure to submit them. And then if the CIP schedule is approved tonight, the worksheets go out to departments on Friday, and then we start kicking off that CIP process as well. So lots of fun things happening in the finance department.
Okay, very good. Moving on to item 5, review of bills. First item, 5A, detailed review of checks for $10,000 and above for the period of February 1st through the 15th, 2023, totaling $1,629,876.70. Questions from the committee? Discussion? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item, 5B, detailed review of all checks issued. Checks 124,713 through 124,846 for the period of February 1st through the 15th, 2023, totaling $1,805,181.94. Discussion from the committee. Questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to our action items. First action item is 6A. Do I hear a motion for ordinance 2023-0-03, amending Chapter 68 to extend the 35-mile-per-hour speed limit on Seminole Highway? We have an approval, and who do I kick this off to?
So I'll start by saying we're not quite, this doesn't necessarily have a financial impact to it, but it's still on our agenda since it was referred out. But Tim Volker agreed to talk to us as the relatively new Public Works Director, but you guys have to be somewhat easy on him because he is relatively new. But thank you, Tim.
Thanks. Yeah, as Misty mentioned, this was something that inadvertently got included on the agenda for tonight. But what the agenda item is, it's a reduction in the speed limit on Seminole Highway as part of the Lacey Road Seminole Highway project. A roundabout's going in on that intersection. So the approach from the south, we're reducing to a 35-mile-per-hour speed limit.
Very good. Questions, discussion? Hearing none, I'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Is that the only one we have for Tim tonight?
Oh, no, there's lots.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All right.
We're glad he's here.
Yes. All right. Moving on to action item 6B. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution R-29-23, adopting the 2024 through 2033 Capital Improvement Plan, CIP schedule?
I move approval.
All right. We have a motion by Alder Gerhart. Discussion. Before we discuss, I'm sorry, we'll move it to staff.
Yeah, so I'll just say the proposed timeline is included in the packet. There really aren't any changes from last year other than kind of how the calendar shifts around.
Okay, very good. Now I'll open it up for discussion. All right, hearing none, I'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Moving to the next action item, 6C. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution R-30-23, final resolution exercising police powers and levying special assessments for Central Park Place, East Sherrill Parkway, and Green Marketplace improvements in the city of Fitchburg, Wisconsin?
I move approval.
All right. Alder Wheeler, motion for approval. And who do I kick this off to?
I'll take this one.
All right, very
So
good.
the preliminary special assessment resolution for these projects was approved back in 2019. So there's 3 roads included, all in the uptown area. So it is Central Park Place, East Sherrill Parkway, and Green Market Place. Those 3 roads have now been put in, and this is the resolution that would place the final special assessment levy onto the benefiting property owners. So the information in the packet includes the split by parcel, as well as some additional details about the cost of the overall project.
Very good. I'll open it up for questions, discussion. Yes, Alder Gerhart.
Can you remind me what the timeline? So I know that during the pandemic early on, we had this like extended timeline for people to pay special assessments. Have we gone back to the standard schedule, or where does that stand?
Yep, so there's really just a handful of properties that are included in this special assessment, and for the most part, they are deferred because they're ag use land. So once that property is no longer planned to just stay as agricultural use, it's either platted for development or they sell it or something like that happens, that would trigger it. The special assessment would have to be due at that point. But most of these are deferred at that point. They are accruing interest, but they are deferred at this point.
Oh.
The COVID exception, we haven't been doing lately, no.
Okay. Oh, that's good to know, though. So there's a relatively small financial impact in the near term for this.
Not necessarily, because some of this property is going to be developed in the near future,
Okay.
we suspect. So there might be a pretty significant impact then, but it would be when the property was ready to develop.
Great, thanks.
Tim, did you have anything to add on that? I'm sorry if
I do not.
All right, Alder Wheeler, you have a question?
And Misty, it'd be up to the developer to let future homeowners know that this property would be assessed.
So future homeowners shouldn't be impacted, because once the property is developed, then the levy amount is due automatically. So it stays with the property, but in general, once the property is platted and homes start being built or whatever, it's already paid at that point, and so isn't passed on to the homeowners in general.
All right, further discussion. Hearing none, I'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Ayes have it, motion carries. Moving on to the next item, do I have a motion to approve Resolution R-32-23, resolution accepting an agreement for engineering services for oversight of Lacey Road improvements?
I move approval.
All right, Alder Gerhart has moved for approval, and am I handing this off to Tim? Tim, you're up again. You have the floor.
All right. So this is an agreement for engineering services for R.A. Smith to do the construction inspection services during construction for the Lacey Road Seminole Highway Improvement Project. So the project limits are from Fitchburg all the way east to the Seminole Highway intersection, including the roundabout. And R.A. Smith is a different consultant than what did the design. So they'll be overseeing our construction inspection services for this project.
Very good. I'll open it up for questions or discussions from the committee. Yes, Alder Gerhart, go ahead.
Thanks. Tim, can you remind me, so I guess I just don't track having done this for other road projects. So is this something that this is just always part of the beginning of a road project? Is we always just contract out for engineering services like this? Or is it typically done by the person that designs it?
It can be done both ways. Typically you do hire the engineer that does the design, but it's also not bad to hire a different consultant during construction services to oversee the construction of it either. So it can be done both ways. There's no right or wrong.
And is this always contracted out, or is this something that we have done internally in the past?
Yeah, there's internally, we still manage the project internally, but there still is the need for the consultant to be hired during construction to help with the oversight of it.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, additional questions? Seeing or hearing none, I'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, motion carries. Moving on to the next item, action item, that would be 6E. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution R-33-23, authorizing Amendment 2 to the South Siding Road Reconstruction Design Services Contract with KL Engineering?
I move approval.
Alder Wheeler has moved for approval. And who will speak to this item again? Tim.
So this is a resolution. The city has an agreement for design engineering services currently with KL Engineering for the South Siding Road Reconstruction Project. This resolution is for additional design services that are needed from KL to cover the revised scope and schedule for 2023 here. And the total amount is for $71,038.
Okay, very good. I'll open it up for questions from the committee. Alder Gerhart.
Thanks. So I'm just curious, I was reading through the specific reasons that the amendment was needed, and I'm just curious, some of these things I just don't understand how it wasn't part of the original scope, like the Hartung property being developed, I thought was sort of relatively well known. The fact that there was some sort of property we needed to acquire that we were uncertain whether or not we would acquire it. It just seems like something that we might know in advance. I'm just curious if this is the result of staff shortages that we didn't foresee these types of design, or I'm just curious about the specific ones. When I was reading through it, it just seemed like maybe we would have been aware of that at the outset of the project.
Yeah, as far as the property being acquired, my understanding is the property owner did not want to sell to the city. So what had to happen then, we had to do a redesign because of that. We weren't able to obtain the property because the property owner was unwilling to give the land to the city for the project. As far as the Hartung property, I don't know the history on that. It could have been because something changed with the development. But I can look more into that and get the answer for that.
So, Chad, you.
I think I can cover Hartung for you, Tim. So Hartung actually is a relatively new development that's been proposed, I think, within the last, 9 months or so. And the original contract that would have been signed with KL would have been long before that. Obviously, they've been designing this road for probably 2 years at this point in time, because it's been part of the entire scope. So I don't think that we knew that Hartung was going to be developed in the timeline that it's being proposed to be developed at the time the original contract was signed.
But how does it change because we knew that property at some point would be developed. How does it change I'm just curious, how does it change the design?
I can't answer how it changes the design specifically. I mean, I'm not obviously an engineer, so I don't want to get too deep into the weeds there, but obviously it's a new consideration for them to have to take into place. And I don't know if the previous thought was that was not going to develop over the relatively long term, that this road was going to be designed and constructed. I don't know what information KL was provided as it relates to the Hartung property itself.
Okay. I'm just generally curious about this, just because we get a lot of these amendments and they add up quite quickly.
They do.
To significant amounts of money.
Yep.
And so I've been trying to read more closely into these when these come through, and I don't know. It just, some of these questions came up, and I just wanted to know a little bit more information about why specifically we didn't know these things from the outset when we did the original design contract.
Yeah, they're fair questions. And I think we can be all frank in our conversations and clear there has been a fair amount of staff turnover that's probably contributed to some of this as well.
Okay, thanks.
Further questions, discussion?
I think part of it could not have been avoided if we're talking about the acquisition of the land that we thought we were going to get, but had to be redesigned because we didn't get that land. The owner of that land was unwilling to sell. So it didn't come under where we could condemn the land and just kind of take it away. Then the other part was just the traffic direction that needed to change. So I don't know if that's something we need to, when we design something, make sure we have the land first, and then come back and do the design or what. I'm not really sure of the process. So.
Well, I think on that note, though, just as an engineer myself, I mean, sometimes you just don't know. When you design and then you need to go after based on that design. So I guess there's a lot of discussion going back. It could go both ways. Yeah. I mean, you certainly don't want to acquire more property than you need to for a particular project, but anyway. All right, any additional questions for Tim or Chad? Discussion. Hearing none, I'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, motion carries. We'll move on to an easier one, Tim. Motion to approve resolution R-35-23. It's the 2023 annual purchase of chemicals.
I move approval.
All right, an approval motion has been made by Alder Gerhart, and I'm kicking this off to Tim as well. All right, go ahead, Tim.
So this is for the annual purchase of the chemicals for our water distribution system. It's for the chlorine and fluoride. Fluorides for tooth decay, and then chlorine's a disinfectant used in the water treatment process. So this is just our annual contract for that.
Very good, thank you. I will open it up to the committee. Yes, Alder Gerhart, go ahead.
Just a comment. I'm so happy that we do this. Adding fluoride to the water is one of the most incredible public health things that's happened, and it's one of the most hidden ones. So I'm so happy that we add that to the water, and just think it's an incredible thing that we do for the health of our residents.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, motion carries. Moving on to 6G, do I have a motion to approve Resolution R-36-23, the 2023 Payment Service Network Fees?
I'll move approval.
All right, Alder Wheeler has motion for approval, and I suspect I'm moving this back to Misty.
Yes. So utility payments are one of the only transactions that we accept credit card for where the fee is absorbed by the city or the utility. So the utility is paying for all of those fees. Currently, it's $36,000 a year. We're proposing that all comes from the sewer utility, which is how we've been doing it for the last several years. Since our water utility is regulated, in order to put some of this charge onto our water rates, we would have to have permission from the PSC. And so we are going to a full rate case later on this year, and that would be our plan, is to ask the PSC to put half of this charge on the sewer rates and half of the charge on the water rates. But we can't do that until we get permission. So it is relatively expensive, $36,000. And this would be the annual amount, not just the quarterly amount.
But this resolution is just, it is the standard that we've been abiding by for the last few years. This isn't the discussion of that it's going before the Public Service Commission.
Correct. No, this is the exact same approach we've used for several years.
Sure, very good. Additional questions? Yes, Alder Gerhart.
I'm just curious if there is a cost, because it mentions in the referral somewhere that it leads to fewer service cutoffs because people don't forget to pay their bill, and therefore, I just wonder if I don't know what the staff requirements for cutting off service to water is. I'm just curious if there's a value to it, or are we just going to try to recover those fees in the near future, and this is just a consequence of having another municipality.
Right.
Yeah.
So there is a staff cost associated with possible disconnections. So when people don't pay, we do have to send out the notices, and then we put out 24-hour door hangers where our crew goes out and put hangers on to let people know that they have to remember to pay their bill or else they'll get disconnected. And then the actual disconnection process is there as well. So it is kind of another conversation that we'd like to have with the council at some point in the near future about if we continue to do disconnections or not. That's kind of a different piece of it. But the reason why we at least have the financial ability to absorb these fees on the utility side is because the utilities, we have a lot more flexibility. You know, it's not subject to levy limits, like say the other fees that we collect are. So we have more flexibility to include these fees within our rates than what we do with taxes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks.
Very good. Additional discussion, questions? Seeing none, I'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, motion carries. Moving on to the next action item of 6H. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution R-37-23, Contract Review Workflow Process?
I move approval.
All right, we have a motion from Alder Gerhart, and who will I hand this off to?
Terry in IT.
Terry. Terry is with us. Terry, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. So this resolution is to contract with Navient, who is our consultant that works with Rob Kodonsky in IT. And basically what we're doing here is the contracts in many of these action items have to go through an approval process before it becomes an agenda item. And it has to go through several people. Right now, it's a manual process. What we're looking to do here is to streamline it and make it more of an automated process that we can integrate with other on-base processes.
Very good. I'll open the resolution for discussion here in the committee. Alder Gerhart.
So this is related to every single thing that goes through OnBase? There's that limitation of only having one person be able to look at it at a time?
I don't think it's everything that goes through OnBase, Alder. It's more of the agenda items and the AP process where there's a contract that council has to review. Chad, the city administrator, has to review, as well as Misty and other people. And by making this automated, several people can look at it and approve it at the same time, as opposed to just having one person do it right now. And it streamlines the process in that it's separate from these other workflows, and it doesn't have to go back through the entire workflow if it were to be rejected and to go back to the submitter.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it seems like an important change to improve efficiency and not waste staff time with silly things like, yeah.
Yeah. Yes. It's near and dear to Misty's heart.
Yeah. And you're working on more of these is it OpenGov? Is that the software that we're using? We're going to be rolling out more of these staff efficiencies over the next couple of years under your guidance. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Alder.
Okay. Thanks.
Very good. Further questions, discussion? Hearing none, I'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, motion carries. Moving on to the next action item of 6I. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution R-38-23, approving contract with Helm Service for the community center boiler replacements?
I move approval.
All right, we have a motion for approval from Alder Wheeler. And who is speaking to this item?
Tim will handle this one.
Tim, you have
Thanks,
the
Tim.
floor again. Yes, thank you, Misty.
So the boilers at the community center have reached the end of their life and are in need of replacement. The city put out an RFP and received 3 proposals for just the equipment, not the contractor to do the actual work. There's a long lead time on purchasing the equipment. Therefore, why we split up the RFP into the equipment, and then also going to put out a new RFP later this year for the actual contracted work. And Helm Service was determined to be the most qualified contractor to perform the work, and we're looking to approve the contract for them.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Discussion. Questions? Seeing none, I'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Moving on to the next action item of 6J. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution R-39-23, accepting an agreement for engineering services for well number 12 and Tower D?
I move approval.
Okay, motion made by Alder Gerhart. And Tim is speaking to this item as well. Tim, the floor is yours.
The capital improvement plan includes design and construction of well number 12 and Tower D. And this also includes the development of a unidirectional flushing program for the water distribution system for the city. The city put out an RFP for this, and Strand Associates was determined to be the most qualified to perform the design services and construction inspection services for this project. And their cost is $662,150 for the work.
Very good, thank you. Questions, discussion from the committee? Alder Gerhart.
I assume this is within the budget. Otherwise, we would have been seeing a budget amendment. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Any additional questions or discussion? Hearing none, I'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Ayes have it, motion carries. Moving on to our last action item, which is 6K. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution R-42-23, acceptance of the proposal from Masters Building Solutions for the Fitchburg Library Chiller Project? And this is a direct referral.
I move approval.
All right, Alder Wheeler has motion for approval.
I think Chad
Yeah.
actually volunteered to do this one, didn't you, Chad?
Okay,
Yeah, I can cover this one. So, as we've talked about before, the current library chiller, which does both heating and cooling in the library, has had a number of mechanical problems. Not long, unfortunately, after the library opened, these problems began. Been told multiple compressors, I think there's 8 in total, have been replaced over time in that particular system, and currently there are either failing or completely failed compressors within that system as we speak. So far, the system has been at least been able to maintain a consistent, reasonably consistent temperatures within the library, but we certainly need to replace this equipment much sooner than we had hoped. And the cost, of course, is not inexpensive, unfortunately. We are planning to use ARPA TID investment plan dollars for this particular project, and what you see before you is just for the equipment. It does not include the installation. That will be bid separately, and that is due to the fact that the equipment you see here has approximately a 12 to 18-month lead time. So we are probably looking at this equipment actually being replaced in spring of '24 in an ideal world. So once we have an idea and can confirm with our equipment provider here that the city is in fact going to purchase the equipment, then we will work with our design consultants, who is Strand Associates, on timing of when we will put the project out for bid for the installation services as well. So you will see another component of this coming back, probably, I'm guessing, in about 6 months or so.
very good. Alder Wheeler, you have a question?
I don't know if you would know this, Chad, but is this a design issue when the library was built, that the chillers weren't up to par? Or is it an equipment issue that the equipment just failed?
I don't know how best to answer that question. What I've been told is that this, I think, I don't know if proprietary is the right word for the system, but it was not a common system that was installed, is my understanding of the situation at hand. I think it was purchased and installed from an out-of-state company. It's been costly to bring people in from out of state to take a look at it over the years. So I don't know exactly where to assess, I guess, fault, if you will, but it has not been a good system for the city.
How long should this system last?
I think the library is built in 2012, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
I think we would have hoped at least 15 to 20 years. That's typically what we would expect from a heating and cooling system, and we're basically at a year 11. So, and I want to say, I'd have to look back. I know I've got some notes on this from my conversations with our team, but I think within the first 2 years, 2 to 4 years, we already had to replace some compressors. So it's been problematic right from the get-go.
Thanks.
Alder Gerhart.
So this uses ARPA TID funding in its entirety. Is there a reason why we didn't consider the use, either partial or full use of fund balance from the library in order to pay for this?
So the library is a separate special revenue fund. The arrangement that we have, not necessarily statute-driven or anything, is that anything that's building-related would be the city's responsibility, and anything operationally related would be the library's responsibility. So the design costs was paid for through the CIP for the library building. We know something's going to break, we just don't know what, but there wasn't enough money set aside for this large of a project in that CIP project.
Is that typical that all libraries, the municipality pays the infrastructure and the library pays for operations?
I'm not sure what's typical. I can tell you it's different than my prior municipality, but I'm not sure what's normal. That is but the long-standing, I guess, history of how our library here at Fitchburg was arranged.
Do we know what the fund balance for the library stands at?
I could look it up.
I'm just curious. Thanks.
All right. Further discussion? Hearing none, I'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it, motion carries. Moving on to our next item, which is item 7, and that's announcements. Our next Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for March 14th, 2023. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
All right. We have a motion before us for adjournment. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it, motion carries. We are adjourned at 6:32 p.m. Thank you. Good evening.